Thanks, everyone. Evaluating frameworks for modern product development. It sounds like a uni lecture, but I promise it won't be. Hopefully a little bit more interesting. A little bit about me. I've got 7 years of product management experience, not 13 or 15 or 30. But I've also got B2C experience in gaming, so gaming as in sports betting and racing betting, not modern warfare. Travel, as well as B2B experience in workforce management and retail media. I've worked in a range of different companies from 11 all the way up to 11,000. And yeah, as Matt said, currently the lead product manager at workforce.com. Some shameless plugs down the bottom there. To get us started, I wanted to ask you guys, how many of these frameworks do you recognize or use? Hands? Who uses something on there? We've got Wagile, Waterfall, Agile, Lean, Less, Nexus, Kanban, Safe. A lot of those I don't even know about. How many people in the audience here use something that's not on there? No one. Very interesting. So maybe I'll be able to give you something that might not be on there. So when I started product management, I started at a B2C gaming company. They were going through a digital transformation. I didn't know any of those terms. I didn't know anything about product management or frameworks. I'd come from being a warehouse manager. So as we all talk about different product manager journeys, that was where mine came from. We were going through the digital transformation. They had a team of consultants coming in, and they were doing an Agile Scrum setup. So I had my own coach, and he said, here's all the stuff that you need to know. Here's stand-ups, here's epics, user stories, burn down charts, here's how we run sprints and all that stuff. But at the same time, the company was coming to me and the executives were coming to me and saying, we need to build this feature by this date. And the panel just before were talking about it, but building a feature by a date, I think it's a bit more project management than product management. But seeing as it was my first job, I didn't really know any better. 3 years later, or a few years later, I moved on, and I was interviewing at a B2C travel company. And when I was interviewing with them, they asked me, do you know about Scrum? Do you know about Agile? And I said, yes, I know all those things. My coach taught me. And I said, okay, great. I know sprints. I know burn down charts. We can do, stories. We can do estimations. I know story points. And I joined that company. I said, these guys know what they're doing. They know exactly the stuff that I know. We're all aligned. Let's start working together. So when I started working with them, I said, let's take my experience from my last company. Let's bring it in. Let's start trying to apply it. And I said, in my old company, we had a specific way of working. And I promise there's not too much of this. There's Jira tickets, Jira workflows. They had vague Jira workflows here. So they had to do, in progress, and done. And I was telling my team, it's really hard for me to communicate with my stakeholders and with the rest of the business and with our customers where something is in the process if I don't have granularity on our tickets. So I said, hey guys, can we try and do something a little bit more granular like this? And therefore, if I know something's in QA, then I know it's past code review, I know it's ready, nearly ready to get released. And an interesting story that when I told my team about this, they said, great, let's do it. We're happy to do it, it'll help you. I'm like, fantastic. And we were running like this for 2 weeks, and then my manager came up to me, and she said, hey, Will, I've had someone make a complaint about you. Not good. So I said, okay, what's going on? What's wrong? And she said, someone from one of the other teams has complained to me that your team has changed their process. And yeah, stunned. I think at that moment I was like, you guys are doing all this Agile stuff. But all I was trying to do was get more information. Are we really being Agile? Moving on. So I started at a startup company. I was employee sort of 12 or 13. When I got into the business, I logged into their ticket management system, Clubhouse. Has anyone heard of Clubhouse? Oh, you have? Yep, Jira for poor people, basically. There's 270 to-dos there, and a lot of them were very vague, like improve UI, upgrade security, something. But that's how it goes, right? So when you're in a startup, you got to do what it takes. So we worked really, really hard for about 6 months, got product market fit, got some customers, got some deals, and got a little bit of funding. So once the startup got that funding, what do? We look to scale. And so the way that this business was looking to scale was to get leadership from other companies to come in and apply these new scaled processes. And so I talked to those people who came into the business and I said, teach me how to scale and show me what you're going to do. And they said, we're going to use SAFe. Everyone heard of SAFe? Yes? Yes? If you haven't, that's SAFe. I think it's a monstrosity, yes. The two things that I wanted to point out from this image here is that we're talking about this in the last 2 days. We've talked a lot about focusing the customer, understanding the customer problems and stuff like that. But in this framework, I think customer only appears once. And that's right in the middle in the little green one. It says customer centricity. Technically, it's in the center, I guess, but it's very small. The other thing that I wanted to mention was right at the top there in the blue bar, it says business agility with all of that stuff underneath it. I think that company is probably still trying to implement this framework 3 years later. But yeah, so I moved to another company with all of these 3 businesses as my experience, and I started a new job, and it's an email marketing company in Australia, in Brisbane, small town. Think MailChimp, but smaller. So it was for enterprise businesses, governments, and banks. And they weren't using any formal agile processes, but guess what? I had 3 previous jobs of agile experience. I knew all about the sprints and the user stories, and so I started running workshops. I started telling them, hey, there's a better way to do this. We could do story point estimation. You can remove time from that. We can do sprints and do iterative releases and all that good stuff. Let's start doing agile, right? And I can really clearly remember getting into a meeting room, and one of the team members, we were in a story point estimation, planning poker. You guys have all done it. And I said, this story point, how much effort is it going to be? How hard is this going to be? And the engineer says, 3 story points is 3 days. That's that, and that's how much it is. And I was thinking to myself, why is this so hard? What is going on here? Why am I struggling so hard to implement these agile processes? And it was at that moment that this was me. I decided that the way I was trying to apply these processes was wrong. And I took a step back, and I had a moment of self-reflection and a moment of realization that I only had one tool in my toolbox. And every business that I had joined had only been using that same tool. It's if you open your toolbox, it's the agile hammer, right? You start hitting that business with the agile hammer thinking it's a nail. And so conveniently, workforce.com comes in. And I start talking to the VP of engineering there when I'm interviewing. And he says, we're a bootstrap startup. Human capital management is the area, but think, onboarding, rotas, I think you guys call them here, rostering, timesheets, qualifications, all that kind of stuff, and clocking in and clocking out for hourly workers. So I talked to the VP of engineering, and he says, we're a bootstrap startup. We've never done IPO. We've never done VC. It's all our customers' money. We're really customer focused. He says, we have a culture of embracing change. It's really important that we, as a team, are really happy to change. He says, we don't do agile. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, we don't do any agile frameworks. Nothing is going on there that's agile. And he says at the end of this, but we still move faster than anyone else in our industry. I said, oh, so you don't run sprints? You don't have Scrum? You don't... Oh, it's gone a bit wonky there, hasn't it? So we don't use Scrum, we don't have user stories, we don't have story points. And I said, okay, that's fine. Can you guys show me a roadmap of where you're going in the next 6 to 12 months? And he says, you know what? We don't have a roadmap either. So I was intrigued. And so now, more than a year on now, I've been able to have a think about the business and understand we've got 4 Qs here now, so we're collecting more of the alphabet. What are the 4 questions that workforce.com answers really well that I've found that other businesses can't answer as well, and it's what makes us more innovative and able to move faster than any other business, in our industry at least. Question 1, what are your customers trying to achieve? I think that's we've talked about this a lot, but I'm trying to put this all into one single context, and this is actually how we work. So we try and figure out what the core problem is that we're trying to solve. Number 2, why can't they do this? So they're trying to do something. So let's say you're trying to go from A to B in a travel. Why can't you do that? Too far away, raining, whatever it is. What is the friction point? What are the problems with trying to get that the customer to try and do what they're trying to do? 3, how do we document customer problems internally? So we know what customers are trying to do. We know why they can't do them. How do we bring that internally and tell our team and align our team around those problems so that everyone has a shared understanding? And then 4, this is probably the one that you guys are probably most familiar with. How do you deliver those positive outcomes to those customers? How do you deliver technical solutions and innovative solutions from your team? And for us, we actually use a process or a framework, sort of, for each of these to answer them, and I'll go through them. So what are our customers trying to achieve? You've all heard this before, jobs to be done, right? So that's what we use. And I think it was about 2 years ago that the leaders of the business got together and they said, it's really hard for us to prioritize what we're doing. We're struggling. It's really difficult. We've got a lot of customers that are saying a lot of things and we don't know how to prioritize what we're going to do, how to focus on the core problems. So they got together and they did a workshop, and I suggest if you haven't done this, definitely do one of these workshops as well. And they came up with 2 core jobs to be done that our customers are trying to do. Number 1, pay staff correctly for the time they work. And number 2, get the right person in the right place at the right time. So they might sound, easy, small, succinct things, but I promise you it's not that easy to come up with these, but very, very, very valuable once you do have them. Great, so we know what our customers are trying to do. Why can't they do that? What are the problems? And what we use for this, everyone's talked about it over the last 2 days, 5 whys. I think the difference that I want to bring to this is that in our company, the 5 whys aren't owned by PMs or engineers. They're owned by the entire company. It's a culture of getting to the root causes of the problem for all of the teams. So you're talking about sales, support, implementations, and product management and engineering. But as long as the team is rallied around understanding the root causes of the problem, I think this is a really, really good way to find those problems that your customers are having to solve. Customers, as they were talking about before, will always come to you with solutions. And it's really easy for a customer to come up to you and say, hey, I get this very often. They say, hey, I want a report. I want a report on how many of my employees were late last week. And I say, great, we can write a report for you to tell you how many employees were late last week. But really, do you not want your employees to just show up on time? Is that not the core problem that we're trying to solve here? Get the right person in the right place at the right time. And so instead of just building a report, we might do that. But at the same time, I'll be thinking behind the scenes, how do we solve the problem of their employees not even showing up on time or at all, and not even needing that report at the end of the day? So, documenting problems internally. I think Ollie talked on this, and we've got ShapeUp by Basecamp. Who here uses ShapeUp? No one? Yep. Yes? My team, yes, okay. But this is really interesting because I find that ShapeUp is a very different way of working. It's a new framework for me. And the cliff notes are you run 6-week sprints with 2 weeks of cooldown. And instead of having user stories and acceptance criteria and stuff like that, you'll actually have a shape. And that tends to be equivalent of a lean canvas, 1-page business case or something equivalent to that, which describes the product problem really well. And when you have those ShapeUp documents, they actually go to a betting table, and the leaders of the business will bet time on those problems. And we talk about taking bets and doing bets a lot of the time, but this is the practical application that we have for it. So, and this changed my mindset. If you remember back to that engineer saying 3 story points is 3 days and that's it, and that's how much effort, how hard is something to do? This is more like how much investment and how much effort are we willing to throw into this problem to try and solve it? Is it something that's small that we can sort of get 2 weeks of one person, just throw them at it? If they get a button, if they get a report, that's fine. Or do we need to build a very, very polished, scalable solution that we need to invest a lot more time in, but we're quite sure of the value of it? So I think flipping that on its head was really valuable for me to understand. There's no centralized backlog. I hate backlogs. You don't want 270 things in the back there that you're never going to do. And so instead, the product management team goes around and asks people, what are the biggest problems right now? And then we filter that for each sprint. There's a clean slate cycle. So for normal Agile Scrum stuff, you have 2-week sprints. If it doesn't get done, it gets pushed into the next sprint, right? At the end of the 6-week sprint for ShapeUp, we have a circuit breaker. We can stop it and say, is this thing still important? Do we still care about solving it? Is there something more important to be doing? And you can actually shelve it, you can stop doing it, or you can continue to do it, but it has to get re-bet on. We have to invest more time in actively instead of just rolling over sprint to sprint. You end up with the whole Agile situation. We've also found that in general, longer cycles is less chaotic and there's less burnout amongst our product development teams. Last one here, for the 4 Qs. I think you guys would be most familiar with this one. Empowered teams, not feature teams. So going back, not build feature X by date Y, it's here's the problem, here's the shaping document and the problem to solve, as well as letting the engineering and the product development teams own those outcomes. I think it really, really helps if you have the first 3 steps really, really well dialed, and then you have a really clear problem, you understand what your customers are doing, and then this part becomes the easy part. Normally you start here, and this part is the hard part. A little quote there, but at the end of the day, we're still looking at viable, usable, feasible, and valuable. The last thing I wanted to talk about is that process isn't set and forget. So when I joined workforce.com, ShapeUp wasn't the bright, shiny star that I'm talking about here. It actually was a little bit of animosity around the team, and it wasn't working as well as it could have been. So what I did, be a product manager. Let's start talking to our users. Let's figure out their job to be done. Let's understand the problems. And essentially what it boiled down to was everyone was writing a shaping document, throwing it, lobbing it into the betting table. There were 20 documents in there. It would take 3 hours, and then they would bet on 3 things, and 17 people would be very upset. So what we changed there was that I proposed that all the product managers own the ShapeUp documents. We filter them down. We only pitch 5 at each betting table, the 5 most important things. We'll still only bet on 3 of them, but the product managers owned it, and they knew exactly what was going in there. And the rest of the team got the outcome that they wanted, which was knowing what was getting bet on, why it was getting bet on, and the confidence to tell that to customers. It's a little bit meta, but you can use the frameworks on themselves to improve the frameworks. So another example here is being open to change. That's our ShapeUp template, and I'm sure everyone's done this with Excels. V1.2.2C, final. That's 5 versions in the last 6 months, and I'm sure we'll have another 5 in the next 6 months. These things, 4 agile values, I'm sure you guys have all seen them. Nothing we're doing is against those. Everything we're doing still falls into those categories. And I think whatever you do choose to answer those 4 questions, whatever processes or frameworks you end up using, they should still fall into those 4 things. In summary, many of us learn Agile Scrum as the only way. I know I did, it was the only tool in my toolbox. But get out there, do some reading, learn about frameworks. So obviously, there's not that many people who know about ShapeUp. That's a good place to start, potentially. Find ways to answer those 4 questions in your business. What are the customers doing? Why can't they get it done? How do you share that information internally? And then how do you deliver those solutions? And then lastly, processes aren't set and forget. Make sure that you can keep improving on them, always iterate on them. Don't just apply the safe framework and then we're done. Don't worry about that. Try and improve 1% every day. That's it. Thanks.
You know the drill. Jump into Slido really quick with some questions. I have some questions. You mentioned you don't have a centralized backlog.
No centralized
And my heart died when I heard that. So
you should be elated.
Well, I am, because I have been that
is
Scrum
lifted.
Master, Jira admin person. But where is it? Like, tell me it's not in the customer success platform, or like, where is the where are they?
Where are the ideas or the
Yeah.
Yep. So each team has their own decentralized backlog.
Oh, okay.
So each team has their set of priorities, but they have a whole bunch of different focus areas. So sales will have different priorities to customer support, but they'll probably have a shared problem that we can try and solve.
Somebody wants to know, did you solve that core problem of employees being late?
Working on it. It's a hard one to solve.
Let us know. Yeah, that can be the subject of your talk next time. What is the most important thing when I start working with an agile methodology with a team that's previously only used waterfall?
I think, again, this is part of it, is start with why. Why are we using this new methodology? Because it's really easy to just, jam something on people and just say, we're doing this now. But if you just start with, hey, this is why there are bad things with waterfall, or this is why waterfall doesn't work for us, and here's a better way. You've got to, start with the problems, start with why.
All right.
And those frameworks.
I thought it was very ironic that Scrum went wonky on your slides, because it goes wonky on most of us at some point or another.
Definitely.
You said the 5 whys are owned by the teams.
Yes.
How do you instill that in new team members, that it's not just a product manager thing, it's not a leadership thing, they're in a meeting and they see this needs to be done kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. When I talk to the customer support guys, for example, they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, someone's had a problem with this leave thing. And I'll go, okay, great, but what are they trying to do? And try and get them more actively thinking about the core problems that their customers are experiencing. And the way that I pitch this to them is, if you can get to that core problem and I can solve it, you will stop hearing about that forever. We want to solve it, and you'll never have to answer another query about that from a customer. That's the selling point.
As a tech writer, that's how you get engineers to write or review documentation. Would you like to never answer this question again? Exactly. Go over to this Confluence page. Exactly. Finally, just quickly, do you think scales up past being a startup?
Does shape up scale up?
Or shape up, I should say, yeah.
Yes, I think so. We're past the startup stage and into the scale up stage, and there's always going to be teething problems, and you're always going to have to improve the process. We don't do shape up by the book, and I think that's really important. There is a book, but we don't do it by the book. We do it in a way that works for us and that works for our culture. So I think it is scalable. I haven't seen anyone do it at Google level, but I'm sure it can work.
All right.
Why not?
Thank you so much for your time. Round of applause, please.